You need to leave. Now, Natalie hissed, her voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. She stood with her arms folded tightly across her chest, like she had already decided I was gone. I was standing by the kitchen doorway, still holding the birthday card I'd written for Becca. It wasn't even addressed yet. My hands trembled slightly, though I kept my face still. I turned to my son, Nolan, waiting, expecting, bracing for that look he always gave when he didn't want to be caught in the middle. But he didn't look away this time. He stood slowly from the dining table, wiped his hands on a napkin, and looked her dead in the eye. His voice was calm. Too calm. This is my mother's home. If anyone's leaving, it's you. It felt like the entire room had frozen mid-breath. Even Becca, perched at the edge of her seat, with cupcake frosting on her cheek, stopped chewing. The flicker of birthday candles still danced behind her, but no one moved to blow them out. Natalie's eyes widened. "You're serious. I'm done pretending," Nolan said. "You don't get to treat my mother like she's disposable. You're choosing her over your own wife," she snapped, her voice rising. "I'm choosing the woman who gave me everything," he said, his voice unshaken. I didn't breathe. I hadn't in nearly a full minute. I looked at him, not the little boy I raised, but the man who for the first time in years saw me. Natalie stepped back, stunned. "You're making a mistake." "No. I made the mistake 3 years ago, letting you walk into this house and push her out of it." Becca's voice was a whisper. Dad Nolan turned to her and softened. "It's okay, baby. You're safe." I set the card down gently on the table. The frosting on the cake had started to melt, and for the first time in a long time, so had the ice in my chest. The smell of sugar and frosting still hung in the air, but no one touched the cake. Becca sat with her arms folded, her party hat slipping sideways. The other kids had already left. Natalie claimed it was just family now, but we all knew the tension had cleared the room faster than any goodbye could. She always had a way of reshaping moments, turning them cold with a single glance or word. 3 years of birthday themes I hadn't helped plan, party supplies, ordered behind my back, decorations that arrived without asking if I wanted to be part of it. Even the photos always missing one person. Me. I stood behind the couch watching as she cleared plates too forcefully, clinking them together like cymbals in a war band. Then she turned to me. "You didn't even buy the cake," she said flatly. I didn't raise my voice. "I paid for the roof over your head." The silence that followed was sharper than anything we'd exchanged before. Natalie opened her mouth, but Nolan beat her to it. "We're done living like this." He was looking at me when he said it, but the words hit her like a slap. She dropped a fork. It clattered to the floor. Natalie scoffed. "You can't be serious." He didn't even flinch. "We've ignored too much. This isn't working. I let it go on because I didn't want a scene. But I'm done letting you treat her like she doesn't exist." Her voice cracked. "You're overreacting. It's a birthday." "No," he said, firm. "It's the last time you get to humiliate her in this house." I blinked fast, unsure whether to feel proud or afraid. Nolan turned to me, then eyes steady. "We'll talk. Tonight." He took Becca's hand and led her upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen, still standing, still holding the corner of the table as if it would ground me. Natalie didn't speak again. She just grabbed her purse and stormed out the front door. The hallway echoed with the sound of it slamming shut. I didn't know it yet, but that door wouldn't open again for a long time. The house was quiet in that strange, strained way, when everyone's awake but no one's making noise. I sat on the edge of my bed, the hall light slipping under the crack of my door like a thin line of tension. Then came the knock. It was soft, hesitant. Nolan stepped in and closed the door behind him. He didn't say anything at first, just walked across the room and sat down beside me like he used to when he'd had a nightmare as a boy. "I should have said something years ago," he finally said, voice low. I didn't speak. I just waited. She's not who she was when we met. I didn't see it at first. Or maybe I didn't want to. He looked down at his hands. She manipulates. She controls everything. Even me. He let out a slow breath and rubbed the back of his neck. I kept telling myself I could manage it. That if I kept the peace, Becca would be fine. That you'd understand. But I let her erase you, and I knew it. I'm sorry, Mom. I placed my hand gently on top of his. I'm still here, I said. He nodded. But it's like, you had to disappear just for our house to function. That's not fair. No, I agreed. It's not. He was quiet for a moment. Then his shoulders squared in that way they did when he was about to do something hard. I want her out. I looked at him, but he didn't flinch. I've thought about it for months. Becca's starting to notice things. The yelling. The way Natalie talks to you. To me. I don't want her growing up thinking this is love. The line in his voice was steel now. Determined. What do you need from me? I asked. I need you to stay strong, he said. And I need your help proving what she's done. I nodded once. Then let's start. He exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for years. By Monday, she had stopped pretending. Natalie moved through the house like it was a hotel. She hated touching nothing, slamming doors with just enough force to be noticed, not enough to be blamed. She no longer greeted me in the morning. She didn't even look at me. But her silence wasn't peaceful. It pulsed. When Nolan wasn't home, she let the mask slip further. You poisoned him against me, she spat one evening, while rinsing a dish she never intended to dry. No, I replied calmly. You did that by forgetting he had a mother. Her eyes narrowed like I'd slapped her. But she didn't respond. She didn't need to. The tension in the room said everything. After that, I started recording. Quietly. A phone in my apron pocket. Notes in a little book I kept inside my sewing kit. Time date what was said. I didn't want to use any of it. But I had learned truth disappears quickly without proof. Natalie must have sensed something. She became sloppier. Crueler. She mocked my cooking in front of Becca. Called my stories irrelevant during dinner. Said things like she's lucky we let her stay. Each time I stayed composed. I needed to. Nolan worked late most nights that week, but when he came home he always checked in. He was careful not to push her. For now. I've contacted someone, he whispered one night in the hallway. Who? A lawyer. Quiet one. Discreet. I nodded. Good. We moved like two people carrying something fragile between us, truth maybe, and the risk of breaking it by speaking too loud. Becca noticed the shift. She clung to Nolan more. She sat by me when I folded laundry. She asked questions with her eyes, not words. And Natalie? She kept pacing the house like it owed her something. She watched me with growing suspicion. But I had already cleared space in myself for what was coming. And Nolan had already started to take the next step. She did it while I was out in the garden. By the time I came back inside, there was a strip of painter's tape stretching across the hallway floor like a caution sign. Bright blue, ugly, bold. Don't cross this line, Natalie said from the other end, arms folded tight. Your space ends here. I blinked at her. Then down at the line. The hallway connected the kitchen, the guest room, and the stairs. Where was I supposed to go exactly? I didn't reply. Just stepped over it without a word, carrying in the herbs I'd picked for dinner. My silence made her fume even more. Nolan got home later than usual. Becca was already in her pajamas coloring at the table. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. He saw it the moment he walked in. He didn't raise his voice, didn't scold her. He just bent down, peeled the tape from the carpet slowly, and balled it up in his fist. Then he tossed it in the trash. Natalie said nothing. She just watched him, mouth tight, eyes sharp. Later that night, after Becca had gone to bed, I heard the guest room door open and close, and in the morning, he made the call. "I want full custody," he told the lawyer. "She's unstable. My daughter deserves better." He didn't ask me for advice. He didn't check with Natalie. He simply decided. From then on, he started sleeping in the guest room more often. Becca followed him there, some nights curling into his side while he read to her. It broke my heart and mended it at the same time. Natalie kept up the show for outsiders. She smiled when neighbors waved. She posted pictures from years ago to make things seem normal. But the house wasn't hers anymore, not emotionally, not practically, not legally either. That blue tape had been more than tape. It was a line drawn between truth and fiction. And Nolan had chosen which side he stood on. The next day, he opened the safe in my closet. He waited until Becca left for school. Natalie was still asleep upstairs, pretending exhaustion, so she wouldn't have to see either of us. The kitchen felt colder than usual, the kind of cold that didn't come from weather, but from truth waiting to be spoken. "I looked into the loan," Nolan said, quietly, sliding a folded sheet of paper across the table. I hesitated before touching it, as if the paper itself might burn. When I finally unfolded it, my breath caught in my throat. Our house. My house had a second mortgage. A large one. 2 signatures sat at the bottom. One belonged to my son. The other was supposed to be mine. Only it wasn't. "I never signed this," I whispered. "I know," he said. His voice didn't shake. "She forged it." The words landed heavily, like stones dropped into water. Everything inside me shifted. Rage, disbelief, grief, all wrapped into something sharp and quiet. "She did it over a year ago," he went on. "I didn't know until recently. I started checking the bank records after she used my card for something I never approved. That's when I saw the loan. And the signature. I stared at the looping imitation of my handwriting. It wasn't even close. Not to me, at least. But to a bank clerk, maybe close enough. "It wasn't just about pushing you out," he said. "She wanted the house. All of it." I pressed my palm against the table to steady myself. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I needed proof before confronting her. And because I didn't want you thinking you had failed me. You didn't." He exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck like he always did when he was overwhelmed. "Mom, I'm not just standing up for you anymore. I'm trying to save what's left before she destroys it completely." For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he slid a second envelope toward me. "I think it's time we talk to someone who can help." My sister showed up that morning with a box of lemon bars and the kind of look that meant business. She barely said hello before placing the container on the counter and pulling out a yellow notepad. "She's going to play the victim when this comes out," she said, flipping to a blank page. "So we get ahead of it. Dates, times, behavior, witnesses. Everything." I nodded, grateful. She'd seen enough during her visits. The cold remarks, the glares, the way Natalie would smile too wide when someone else was watching. My sister was a nurse for 30 years. She knew how to read a person trying to cover up cruelty. We sat at the kitchen table and wrote. I added to the notes I'd already taken, dates circled and underlined. My sister recalled a dinner 6 months ago when Natalie had snapped at me over a misplaced spoon. We documented that too. "She's smart," my sister muttered, tapping the pen. "But she's not careful anymore. That's where she'll slip." Later that day, Becca wandered into the room while I was folding laundry. Her arms wrapped around one of her dad's old sweatshirts. "Grandma," she said softly, "why does Mommy yell at you so much?" I froze for a second, then sat down and pulled her close. Her little face pressed into my shoulder, warm and confused. "Because I'm still here," I said gently. She didn't understand it all yet, but she would, someday. And when that day came, I wanted her to remember that I didn't leave. That night, I watched Nolan organize papers at the kitchen table, legal documents, financial records, screenshots of bank activity. My sister highlighted sections with quiet focus. We didn't talk much. The work filled the space between us. Natalie stayed in her room pretending she had a headache. But the tension leaked through the walls. This house wasn't silent. It never had been. It had heard the slammed doors, the whispered insults, the tearful apologies no one believed anymore. And now, it would hear something else. The next morning, Nolan asked me to be there when the lawyer arrived. She wasn't expecting it. Natalie walked through the front door just after noon, sunglasses still on shopping bag in hand. The moment she saw the man seated at the dining table in a navy suit with a leather folder in front of him, she froze. "What is this?" she asked, her voice already rising. Nolan didn't look up right away. He waited until he'd finished signing the final line, then stood calm and steady. "These are separation papers," he said. "And a cease and desist order regarding the second mortgage. The attorney can explain it all to you." Natalie blinked as if she hadn't heard correctly. Then she laughed, but it was brittle and high-pitched. "You can't be serious." "I am," he said. "You're ruining our family," she snapped, stepping forward. "No," Nolan said, his voice firm. "You ruined it when you turned this house into a battlefield." The lawyer remained quiet, offering her the packet without a word. She didn't take it. She stood there glaring between us. "You don't have proof," she hissed. "I do," I said softly from my seat by the counter. "You left a trail." Natalie turned on me like a match to dry wood. "You've been plotting this from the beginning." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. "Get out," she said, breath shaking. "You can't just throw me out. You forged my mother's signature to steal this house," Nolan said, stepping between us. "You don't live here anymore, legally or otherwise." She grabbed her bag and stormed upstairs. The slam of her feet loud against the hardwood. Drawers opened and shut. A suitcase thudded against the floor. No one followed her. An hour later, the front door slammed behind her as she dragged her suitcase down the walkway, head held high, like she still had something to protect. But the silence that followed her exit was something I hadn't heard in years. It wasn't emptiness. It was release. And that night, Nolan changed the locks. She didn't say goodbye. Just stormed through the upstairs hallway, dragging her suitcase with one hand and her pride with the other. Drawers opened and slammed. Closet doors creaked. Coats, shoes, perfume bottles. She swept through everything like a storm, looking for somewhere else to land. Nolan stayed downstairs with Becca, reading aloud from a picture book, like nothing upstairs was crumbling. The girl leaned against him, calm. She knew her mother was leaving. She didn't cry. I stood in the hallway, out of sight, listening. The last thing Natalie did was throw the bathroom door shut so hard the mirror rattled. Then silence, followed by the sound of wheels bumping down each step, one by one. And then finally, the door closing behind her. But upstairs in the room she once claimed as hers, pieces still lingered. A wedding photo sat on the dresser. Framed in silver, both of them smiling too widely. I didn't know if she left it by accident or on purpose. Either way, it stayed face down after I found it. Then tucked behind a jewelry box, I saw it, a folded receipt. The date caught my eye first. Then the amount. $6,000. Withdrawn from an account under my name. The retirement fund my late husband and I had built over years of small sacrifices and quiet planning. I hadn't touched it since he died. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't when I brought it to Nolan. "She took it," I said. He stared at the slip for a long time before pulling out his phone. "I'm filing a police report," he said. "This isn't just wrong. It's criminal." I nodded. "You don't have to protect me anymore, Mom?" I looked him in the eye. "No," I said. "Now I protect you." That night we boxed up the last of her things. What little she left behind didn't weigh much. But what she took, it carried consequences. 6 months later, Becca stood on her tiptoes, carefully setting out the silverware. She counted each fork out loud, her little brow furrowed with focus. When she got to the last place setting, she looked up and smiled. "Grandma sits here," she said, patting the chair beside hers. I nodded, swallowing the warmth rising in my chest. That chair used to be extra, the one pulled out of the corner, if needed. Now it was mine again, permanent expected. Nolan was out on the patio, flipping chicken on the grill, his laughter drifting through the screen door. My sister leaned against the counter behind me, slicing a pie she'd baked that morning. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and butter. Real smells. Honest ones. There was no tension humming beneath the walls anymore. No whispers through closed doors. No silent treatments or fake smiles. Just voices. Just music. Just home. When we sat down to eat, Nolan said, "Grace." Not the hurried kind we used to say when Natalie was there, but the kind that lingered. "Thank you for getting us through," he said quietly. Eyes meeting mine. I nodded, once, not needing words. Becca reached for my hand during the prayer and squeezed it tight. Later, while clearing plates, Nolan handed me an envelope. I opened it, expecting a photo or a note. It was a copy of the new deed. My name sat alone at the top, clean and clear. "I wanted you to see it in writing," he said. "She's gone. Legally. Financially. Entirely." I ran my thumb over the paper, feeling something deeper than ink, peace. That night, as I wiped down the counters and turned off the lights, I paused in the doorway to the dining room. The table still had crumbs on it, napkins folded with fingerprints, a juice glass tipped slightly sideways. It looked lived in. It looked like family. And in the chair beside Becca's mine, there was a warmth that hadn't been there in years. I pulled it out, sat down, and let myself stay a while.